Oh, they're great.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So it looks like now Adrian's left the courtroom, and I see one of his attorneys still in there. I hear the judge. Basically, I don't know if the judge is going to address the families in the courtroom. I don't know. I know Rebecca Lopez is there, and so she's going to have some insight on this. But
and then we are expecting press conferences after this.
Okay, yeah, right. And the family, as you can see, they're seated there for a reason, and I'm not exactly sure what it is, unless the judge maybe is going to talk to them. You know, this has been exhausting for these families, and I think that may be part of what we're seeing too. I can't weigh in. I can speculate whether or not it's disappointment, but it's certainly heartache. It's certainly exhaustion.
Oh, I can't even imagine being these families.
Right.
There's something weird going on. I continue to write them saying, like, hey, what's going on? Like, I update them with updates. By the way, just expect there's a few more things coming down the pipe.
Well,
okay.
There's supposed to have a.
Okay.
My recollection is the legislature put a time limit on
Okay.
to dispose of cases.
I thought so.
Well, we can.
That's why I've been writing them.
We can.
I don't know if you have any suggestions. I'd like to hear them.
Okay, so Terry, what's your reaction here?
Okay, so we have a not guilty. I think the I think the probably the most effective argument was, can you hold this man accountable and not hold 376 other officers accountable?
Right.
That he's the low man on the totem pole. He did act, and you can't look at it in a vacuum. You can't look at it, well, he did drive up once he heard there was a shooter at the school, and then, yes, he did run into the school, but it was that minute and a half or that period of time in between that he didn't do what he was supposed to do, is what the state was claiming. And the defense is saying, no, you've got to look at it in the totality of the circumstances. Basically, he did drive up into a situation. He did not know what was going on. He didn't know if he was driving up to the shooter, that if it had been the shooter, he could have hit him with his vehicle. I mean, basically that was implied. So it wasn't that he didn't do anything. He called in on the radio. There are so many different things that occurred with the dispatcher not being able to relay the information that they needed to relay, that the fact that the school doors didn't lock, they brought that into closing argument, that there are a lot of things that could have happened that might have also kept these children out of danger, that the officers that did run into that hallway, into the fatal funnel, for the most part, if those doors had been locked, then maybe they could have encountered the shooter in the hallway. So I think the defense was trying to say it's not just the action of one officer that caused the injury or the who endangers these children. It was a variety of things. That one thing I think that I would have mentioned had I been the defense, and I believe I heard this correctly in testimony, is that the special ed teacher, she stopped the kids from coming out of the south wing, which is a fourth grade wing. She stopped them from coming out, and then she did say that she thought the shooter had gone in that south door. Well, that is the door that Adrian Gonzales went in. He went into the south door. So as far as he may be thinking, is that he was following that shooter right into the school, but he had to do a few things in the meantime to get some information, figure out what was going on. Okay.
What about Peter Arredondo?
Yeah, I think you're right. Tanya's asked, what about Peter Arredondo, the chief who has been held responsible and for being the chief who should have been in charge.
Right.
We heard testimony that the person that should have been in charge was the school resource officer chief, and he did not take command. He didn't take charge. He didn't have his radios. He had left them in his car or at home or in the station or something. He did some things that you would expect a chief of a division to act in a different way. Now, Adrian Gonzales, like you say, he was a low man on the totem pole, and those are not my words, those are Nico LaHood's words, that he was a low man on the totem pole, and he was doing what he thought his training taught him, and that he was following what his training was. He was trying to ascertain what the information was coming in, and he was trying to figure out where the shooter is, and in a minute and a half, that shooter was in the school.
What do you think? What do you think happens now to Peter Arredondo's case?
Well, this is what I think. And what Tanya asked is, what do you think is going to happen to his case? His case is supposedly, he's been indicted. His case is going to be set for trial, and I personally think they will try him. I think they will try him. They have seen exactly how to try this case now, and he has a completely different responsibility than Adrian Gonzales, and I think they will definitely try him. I think they will look at this case and say, okay, I'm not sure I'd call Officer Hill with his laser animation, and because I think, and I'm sorry if you didn't see the testimony, you don't know who I'm talking about, but he was a Texas Ranger who basically had investigative bias. And this is what happens oftentimes in investigations, that he tailored his reports to what the prosecution's theme basically was. And so I think on cross-examination, it was pointed out that that's exactly what he was doing. And he was...
Yes.
Yeah? We still on? Okay. And so I think that they will now, they will get feedback. They will have. I don't know if the prosecution can see the trees for the forest. In other words, I don't think they had so much information. They had so many things that they were looking at. They had so much evidence that they had to look at. It was almost as if they had too much, and they couldn't narrow it down to focus on the charges of child endangerment involving Adrian Gonzales. Now, I think they will know what they need to do with the chief. I think that the chief, everyone, even though you had DPS troopers there, you had federal officers there, you had sheriff's deputies there, you had so many different law enforcement agencies there, but somebody was looking to him to take charge and say, this is what we need to do. And by the way, he's the one who made the statement that he thought they were dealing with a barricaded shooter, not an active shooter. And so I think that will all come into play, and they will try him on this case.